All that applause is for your new haircut, Maestro.
Oh boy, I knew that I get in trouble.
I like it very much. Good evening. Thanks for coming in from the sun. We've got an amazing program. I can't wait to ask you about it. My name is Christa Wessel, and I am the morning host of what I hope is your favorite radio station, All Classical. That's what I like to hear. Good. And this, of course, is Carlos Kalmar. Hi.
Hi. The bad news about the haircut is, you know the story of Samson? Okay, just wait. It will be a slow evening.
It's nice for the weather. I like it.
I didn't do it because of the weather, but never mind. It's like...
Well, my first question for you regarding tonight's program is, to the casual observer, namely me, it seems like such an interesting array of pieces. How did you come up with the idea to put these all together under one roof?
Well, first of all, in a way, I must apologize for this program. Because I realized, you know, my brain is sometimes God knows where. I realized after doing the program and thinking, this is a great program, because it's a little bit all over the map. And then I realized tomorrow is Mother's Day. And then I thought, like, oh boy, the first half of the program is not exactly Mother's Day music. But never mind, we have Tchaikovsky and we have Dvorak, and that is the Mother's Day bouquet. Here you have it. It's great. Actually, we came across this, first of all, just to start with, I was dying to do the Britten here, because it's time to do it, and it's one of the great pieces of the opera, Peter Grimes. I actually know that my friend Chris Metaliano at Portland Opera, he would love to do it, but well, he's a little afraid that it will not sell, I think, because the story is a little grim. And of course the music is 20th century music, although very melodic. So I was dying to do that. We are playing the 4 interludes plus the Passacaglia, and the Passacaglia is in the middle. So the movement number 4 is the Passacaglia. And then I thought it's time to do another Sibelius Symphony. Now, in regards to Sibelius Symphonies, the story goes like this. Many, many years ago, 6 years ago, I was in Philadelphia, just being a guest in a concert of the Philadelphia Orchestra with Osmo Venske, who is the music director of the Minnesota Orchestra, great guy. He's from Finland, and he was doing Sibelius 6. And after the concert, I went to visit him, and I said to Osmo, the Sibelius 6 is great music, but I didn't really understand what it was about. Because it's complex. And he said, I hear you, and it's troubling, and you know what? I assume that you, like every other conductor, which is true, you have done number 2 and number 1, true, which are easy. If you want to do something that is challenging, but you will adore it, do number 7. That's why number 7 is there tonight. You don't like it, call Osmo Venske in Minnesota. It's all his fault. And then, of course, I mean, the rest works like a of course thing, because of course we have to invite Arnaldo Cohen back. What else? I mean, great pianist. I love him. You love him. He has to be back. And by the way, this is, in a way, this is a revisitation for Arnaldo and me. This is the first piece we played together in Philadelphia. Everything happens in Philadelphia. and at the end, I decided to put the Scherzo Capriccioso by Dvorak, and once you hear it, you will understand why. First of all, why it is at the end, because you think, after Tchaikovsky piano concerto, why are we even playing something? And second, you will understand, but maybe I talk about it a little bit later, why it is at the end and not at the beginning.
So would you like to talk about the program from the beginning and make our way to the Dvorak? The Peter Grimes, as you mentioned, the opera itself, very grim, about a fisherman who is allegedly falsely convicted of a crime.
Actually, he's not really convicted. Peter Grimes, it's a small fishing village in the coast of England. And the opera starts with the coroner's verdict on the death of Peter Grimes' helping boy. Apprentice, who died. And the coroner determines that there was no foul play, and it was an accidental death. And Peter Grimes is very angry about the verdict because he says that doesn't clear him in the mind of the villagers. And a lot of things happen during the opera. There is kind of a love story between Peter Grimes and a lady from the village. And it's very true that actually the villagers think that Peter Grimes had something to do with the death of his apprentice. It's never been proved throughout the opera. But what happens in the opera is that Peter Grimes, through the hands, in a way, of the lady Peter Grimes wants to marry, gets a new apprentice, another 11, 12-year-old boy who is supposed to help him fishing. And that's where tragedy really happens, because Peter Grimes doesn't live in the village, he lives outside of the village, and he lives in a hut, which is actually it's a boat that it's turned upside down. There he lives with his apprentice. And what happens is, in the opera, that there is a huge storm, and everything is flooded, but Peter Grimes, who is in the village, in the bar of the village, insists he wants to go home with his new apprentice. Through the rains, through the storm, everybody is like, you can't do that, it's dangerous, and he insists. So he goes, and later on, the villagers come to his hut in order to question him again what happened with his first apprentice. And one thing leads to the other. On one side, Peter Grimes thinks that he's being accused again, and he flees, and on the other side, his new apprentice slips, falls to his death in the sea. So there it is. And of course the opera ends with, well, Peter Grimes is never convicted of a crime, but essentially he takes his boat out and kills himself with the boat, which is why I kind of said, I'm sorry for putting this program. You think like, oh boy. Now, the 4 interludes of Peter Grimes and the Passacaglia appear all in the opera. They are really taken out of the opera. The only thing, if you ever listen to the opera, is the order in which they appear in the opera is not the order in which they are played tonight. And traditionally, they are never played this way. So it doesn't, what I'm telling you about is you can't really follow the story if you follow this Sea Interludes, because it's not entirely true that way. So there is this sunrise with this very dim but bright light in the music at the beginning, and where you hear at that time very calm sea, and then there is this party in the village. That's the movement number 2, party in the village. Then there is a movement called Moonlight, which is amazing music. If you ever, well, actually for us, living in Portland, Oregon, all we have to do is probably during the fall or winter time go out to the Pacific Ocean and sit there at night when the weather is, although the sea is calm, there is some weather in the distance, because in the distance you see lightning. That's the 3rd movement, because there is this constant motion of the sea, which is slow, and then you hear takada, takada, you hear lightning. And then comes the Passacaglia, which we put there. You can put it anywhere, but it's well put. And finally, the last movement of the 4 pieces from Peter Grimes, for Sea Interludes, is the storm, which in the opera happens quite early. And it's, boy, this is a storm. I mean, if you ever thought how it feels in music when the wind howls, you're going to hear that. It really howls, and the power. Actually, it's for me, it's always an interesting phenomenon to see how musicians, composers described bad weather, what they did. Because, of course, you have bad weather described by late romantic composers where they use huge orchestras and the percussion goes crazy and you hear cascades of water pouring down. And then you have other things like the Pastoral Symphony of Beethoven, fourth movement, where it's a storm and reduced. And then the funniest thing is when you go to composers like Rossini and Vivaldi, because all they use is strings, and still it works. Okay, this storm that you are going to hear utilizes a big orchestra, and as I told you, it's a very fast storm, and it really I think that in a way you feel what happens when you witness a storm at sea, meaning the uncontrollable power of the water is there, and the most amazing thing happens in that storm because it goes and goes and goes and is threatening, and then it dies down, and you think in the music that you see like, we here in Oregon can speak all the time about that. It's bad weather and you see one little glimpse of blue sky, and then blue sky is gone. It's written for Portland, this piece. Actually, by the way, Benjamin Britten was a guy who spent a lot of his time in the United States, because Benjamin Britten was a conscious objector to the war, World War II, and he decided to leave his native country, and he came here with his partner, the British tenor Peter Pears, for whom he wrote most of his music. I mean, Peter Grimes is a tenor role, which was written for Peter Pears. Other operas that you find, Albert Herring is another opera by Benjamin Britten, written for Peter Pears. Was kind of an inspiration, but it's very powerful what you're going to hear.
And everybody in the orchestra has meaty stuff to play in these 4 Sea Interludes.
Well, the fun thing is that, in a way I could say that although the piece gets loud and brassy at times, I would say that the character of the music until we get to the storm is still contained, sometimes slow and meaningful, and that's why the storm works so well at the end, because it explodes completely. Even the second movement is Party in the Village. Yeah, it's a great party and there is huge energy, but at the end it dies down, and the storm doesn't die down. You'll hear it.
So if the 4 Sea Interludes embody the sea in nature, to me, Sibelius's music also has a bit of that natural influence in it. And he wrote this symphony saying it was about joy and kind of a bucolic feeling, although given it's Sibelius, there's always like a dark underhue to it as well.
Well, it's always funny because I could somehow make how can I say, a little bit of jokes, because it's always funny to hear when a composer thinks that he writes bucolic music and what comes out, because bucolic is not exactly what I think that Sibelius' 7th Symphony is. What it is I happen to, although Sibelius got to be very old, of course I never met him, that would have been a dream, but I met a lot of Finnish musicians. And they are very Nordic, which means if we all probably have some friends who are from Northern Europe, which means well-behaved, self-contained, very quiet. Now, Finnish people have also this twist. They are a little, in a very positive way, funny and strange. And they come from a country, sometimes in music, when I happen to be allowed to conduct a piece of a country that has nothing to do with the country in which I am. I like to describe a little bit. So, for example, I remember those days when I first brought to Vienna and Austria a piece called Appalachian Spring by Aaron Copland, which the orchestra did not know. And I said, aside from, okay, the dance thing is fine, but the slow motion of the music, I kind of describe, you have to think of the vastness of a mountain range that is not as high as the Alps, because it's not. Meaning it's more, everything is long and bluish, so to speak, and that's how I understand certain parts of Copland's music. Sibelius, however, comes from a land that is, it's full of seas, trees, slightly hilly, gently hilly, and you never see, well, outside of Helsinki and Lahti and Tampere, you don't see a soul. There's nothing there. And so with that in mind, you kind of get where I think to put that in conjunction with bucolic is kind of funny. Or it's, but just to be a little more precise on the symphony that you are going to hear, it's an unusual piece. It's an unusual piece because Jean Sibelius wrote 7 symphonies. This is the last. He actually, so history tells us, he wrote a symphony number 8, which he thought that is not a valid symphony, and he destroyed the manuscript. It's lost for eternity, so we don't know. And the other part that is quite interesting is this is practically the last big piece that he wrote, although he lived for quite a while after he completed this piece. And he was always concerned in his symphonies with the form of the symphony. What is actually the real form of a symphony? Because we have, of course, the traditions of symphony that tell you a symphony, 4 movements, fast, slow, dance, fast. And then we have wonderful human beings who influenced the symphony, like Mr. Beethoven, who wrote that, but then he wrote his symphony number 9, and everybody afterwards was like, oh my God, how am I going to top that? And others who influenced the symphony per se. And although Sibelius has symphonies that have 4 movements, the one you're hearing tonight has 1 movement. That's all you are going to hear. It's 1 movement. But the movement can still be distinguished as in 4 parts. You are going to hear a slow part, a majestic climactic part, a very fast part, a slow part. So in a way, it's 4 movements. The entire piece is 21, 23 minutes, I don't know, around that amount of time it takes. And when it was first published and first premiered, Sibelius was a little bit doubtful whether this is a symphony. So he said, it's a fantasia symphonica, so it's a symphonic fantasy or something like that. And of course, scholars have kind of tried to figure out this symphony, what it actually is. Some said it's a rondo, fine. Or it is a symphony that goes on forever. Well, 21, 22 minutes is not forever. But in essence, the more important thing is what the character of the piece is and where this symphony goes. Of course, I'm kind of lobbying for this wonderful orchestra, but in a way, if you would have the opportunity to hear the symphony twice, it would be great. Because this symphony is a little, how can I say, it's not the easiest symphony that you will hear. And the reason is, it is very, in most of the time, it's very slow moving and it's very dense. So, just to describe what means dense in music, I go to my favorite comparison, which is, don't ask me why that happens, but I always compare music to food. So, I love food. I mean, why do I live here in Portland, Oregon? Guess what? Anyway, you know that sometimes you have this fluffy, light desserts that are so fun to eat and just disappear in your mouth. That's kind of Haydn symphonies. It's wonderful. And okay, and now think about a chocolate that is like compressed, and you take a bite and you think, I'm adding weight already. That is the symphony you're going to hear. Please, please, please don't think about chocolate when you hear it. But that's what it is. This, oh my God, these layers of sound and this amazing, slow-moving character of the music. So yeah, sometimes he gets fast, but the texture, it's so complex. That's why in a way, I say, listen to it twice.
I agree with that. And one thing that I find helps me understand this symphony is latching on to that trombone motif, kind of this heroic statement from the trombone, which appears throughout the movements of this movementless symphony.
Yeah, exactly. The trombone, in a way, if you will, what he does twice, 3 times actually, in the symphony, he builds tension and builds and builds and builds and builds, and at the peak of the tension, the trombone floats over the entire thing like a wing, and that is one of the keys of the symphony, the trombone melody. And another little hint for the weirdness of this symphony. You know that symphonies, most of them, not all of them, many symphonies end fast and loud, like da 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 dum bum, wow, great. There are some symphonies that end exactly in the other corner, very softly, but it's very clear. I would say the audience knows very clearly, yeah, that was it. Great. This symphony is a little bit of a problem in that. Just listen to the ending. You will. It's not that it is like surprising. It's like, okay, it ends. By the way, yeah, that is a story. You probably heard it. I'm sorry. Now that comes to mind why this symphony ends weird. I don't know whether anybody remembers we had, because can I steal a story that was probably told from this chair? My dear colleague and friend Hannu Lintu, the Finnish conductor who comes regularly to the Oregon Symphony, who is this tall, great guy. He has an explanation to this, why this symphony, for example, ends like, what do we do when we have a great chat, all of us, or we go to dinner and then we say goodbye? We stand at the door and say goodbye, 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 and then we chat for another 5 minutes and we say goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Finnish people, Hannu told me, just go to the door and say see you, and are gone. Think about that.
Well, in the couple minutes we have left, I want to touch on Arnaldo Cohen, who is a spectacular pianist. Last time he was here, he played all 5 Beethoven concertos over the course of a couple of nights. And tonight, it's just the Tchaikovsky concerto, but it's a huge concerto for the pianist. And you guys have some South American blood in common, so I'm assuming you've got a great rapport.
We have a great rapport. I can say that, unfortunately, we do not have blood, South American blood in common, because as much as I wish, I do not have South American blood. I was just born there. So Arnaldo was born, and he has blood in Brazil, and lives in this wonderful little tiny city that is called Bloomington, Indiana. And I was born in Uruguay, but my heritage is 100% Austrian. So there you have it. And we have worked over the time in several locations, different concerti. And of course, when it comes to concerto, playing the great concerti of the world for piano, it's of course Tchaikovsky 1, Rachmaninoff 3, Prokofiev 3, some Beethoven, some Mozart, and there you have it. And tonight it is Tchaikovsky, because Arnaldo is an absolute master of this concerto. You will enjoy it. It's just a fantastic performance by him.
I had a chance to interview Arnaldo Cohen earlier this week by phone, and if you're interested in hearing his take on this concerto, you can go to the All Classical website, allclassical.org, and listen. He's a fascinating and entertaining guy. And then you mentioned we end the program with the bouquet of flowers for Mother's Day.
The bouquet of flowers. The interesting thing about the bouquet of flowers that we are going to play tonight, the Scherzo Capriccioso, is this was written just a tad before Dvorak wrote his Symphony No. 7. So he was very famous at the time. Second, the piece immediately got very famous and very appreciated by the audience. Matter of fact, at that time, starting in the 1890, God knows well, Chicago Symphony in 25 years programmed this piece 12 times, which you will not hear of any other piece probably on our days that is being played every second year. But this was. So you might think, what happened? Why don't we play this piece anymore? Why don't we? Maybe we haven't heard it here in Portland, Oregon for 15 or 20 years. Reason that I can come up is two reasons. First of all, wrong length, too long for an overture, and too short for anything else. Second reason, it's really hard. It's not easy to play, and so it's not one of those pieces that you can just, oh yeah, and then we do a little Scherzo Capriccioso by Dvorak and let's go, and after 15 minutes of rehearsal you say, yeah, okay, great, thank you orchestra, goodbye. Doesn't work with this piece. It's a tricky piece of music, but you will hear it, you will hear all the qualities that you... Actually, a couple of weeks ago, there was my Italian colleague Michele Mariotti here, conducting the Slavonic Dances, Opus 46. I hope many of you attended to his concerts. That is the character of the scherzo. Like the Slavonic Dances, it's only longer. It is a piece that is 13 minutes, give or take, something along the line, 12, 13. Therefore, it is too long for him. But it has all the qualities of Dvorak in his fast movements, meaning huge energy, brilliant orchestration, melodics that are to die for, and on top of that, this lyricism where everybody wants to not sit still while playing or listening, where you think like, oh, let's get up and dance. It's great fun.
A marvelous program you've put together, Carlos.
I hope so.
This concert conversation has been videotaped and will be on the All Classical website. If you have friends that would benefit from watching it, or you want to watch it again, you can do that at allclassical.org.
You hear again the story about the cake.
Carlos Kalmar.
Christa Wessel.